Welcome to the channel. Before starting the video, sign up and leave your like so we can hit the goal of 600 subscribers. Billionaires and monarchs now rule football. The transfer of stars like Karim Benzema to the Saudi Pro League has fueled calls to stop poaching big names. But the Saudi takeover is the natural result of the sport becoming a toy for billionaires. A recent wave of soccer stars is following in the footsteps of Cristiano Ronaldo. From French striker Karim Benzema to 2018 World Cup winning midfielder N'Golo Kanté to Senegal captain Kalidou Koulibaly and Portuguese international Ruben Neves, they are all signing for Saudi Arabia's Pro League. Former England and Manchester United star Gary Neville has called for the Premier League to stop transferring players to Saudi Arabia to ensure the integrity of the game is not undermined. Meanwhile, Alexander Ceferin, president of the Union of European Football Associations, UEFA, decidedly unshaken, was forced to assert that Saudi clubs signing top European footballers do not threaten European football. For many, a blatant sports wash project luring superstars for staggering sums of money constitutes a danger to football itself. But Saudi Arabia doing its best to buy football with crates full of blood-spattered petrodollars doesn't threaten the sport, it's exactly what the modern game demands. An inconceivably wealthy state buying up European teams and doling out $200 million annual contracts at home could really shift the balance of power in football, kicking the sums of money involved in transfers and contracts even further into the stratosphere. However, it is also just the latest step in football's sad conversion from a popular game to a speculative object better suited to investment portfolios and sports laundering. Diverse states hijacking the world's most popular sport are neither new nor rare. The phenomenon reached grim heights recently at last year's World Cup in Qatar, and Manchester City, backed by the United Arab Emirates, lifted this season's Champions League trophy. But that doesn't detract from the morbidly impressive extent of Saudi Arabia's recent sports laundering attack, which is by no means limited to football. The Private Investment Fund, PIF, is Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. With an approximate value of $650 billion, it is one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Designed to diversify the Saudi state's investments to break dependence on oil revenues, the PIF's international investments include friendly, scrappy small companies like Uber, Blackstone, and Boeing. Internally, PIF underwrites projects like Neom, the dark, futuristic city that will absolutely be built as planned and is by no means a vile PR stunt. The notoriously opaque nature of the PIF means that some of its most transparent investments have been in football. In 2021, PIF bought an 80% stake in Premier League club Newcastle United. Although the PIF is chaired by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Premier League apparently assured that the Saudi state would not control the club and waived the deal. When a despot directly linked to the murder of a journalist and countless human rights abuses proved to be a somewhat controversial owner, league administrators responded by introducing a regulation that would prevent human rights violators from buying clubs. Of course, this has passed 2 years after Newcastle's purchase and has yet to be enforced, but it's still pretty good, as far as football regulations are concerned. Claiming a spot in the world's most watched league was a key opening salvo in the Saudi quest for sporting soft power. Saudi Arabia has bolstered these efforts with dizzying investment in building its own league. This started by making Cristiano Ronaldo the highest-paid footballer in the world earlier this year when he signed for Al Nassr, a club backed by a PIF subsidiary. In early June, the PIF took over the country's 4 biggest clubs, including Al Nassr, with the intention of pushing the Saudi Pro League further forward. In the same week, the free transfer of Benzema from Real Madrid to Al Ittihad was confirmed. He will reportedly earn around $100 million a year, with bonuses for backing a possible Saudi bid to host the 2030 or 2034 World Cup. Those sums are astronomical. PIF will pay more for some seasons of Benzema and Ronaldo than for Newcastle. They have since been joined by N'Golo Kanté, Ruben Neves, Kalidou Koulibaly and Edouard Mendy. These extraordinary contracts. They will undoubtedly be robust enough to attract more stars to the Gulf. A mass exodus of excellent, if aging, players to Saudi Arabia represents a new wrinkle in football, but it is by no means a fundamental change. Famous players and entire clubs have long been glittering embellishments for the rich and powerful, and Saudi Arabia is one of the richest and most powerful forces in the world right now. As modern as possible. If Saudi Arabia's forays into football sound depressingly familiar, it's because we've heard this macabre song before. Some of the biggest clubs in European football are sports car washes. Manchester City, owned by UAE Vice President Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, is essentially an Emirati PR firm that is fantastic at football. The only enjoyable aspect of the culmination of their 15-year sluggish march to the Champions League title was probably Jack Grealish's binge. Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, is a similar project with support from Qatar. Unsurprisingly, the financial power of an entire petrostate makes signing the likes of Neymar and Kylian Mbappé a little easier, even if they were less fortunate actually winning European trophies. The tradition and fan bases built into football clubs make them ideal for deflecting and absorbing criticism and changing states' perceptions. While sovereign wealth funds ostensibly buy football clubs to diversify their investment portfolios, the blatant arms race to outspend other teams and buy trophies means that making money from a football club is a challenging prospect. Which makes the fact that the other most common ownership model in big clubs tends to be American billionaires a little curious. The lucky fans get a faceless montage of VC costumes who hire the right bean counters to outperform, before jumping in with a profit, if they get in early enough that profit is possible. The less fortunate end up with idiots like Chelsea's Todd Boehly, who openly doesn't understand the sport he spent billions buying and whose idiotic attempts ensured his new club fared significantly worse despite spending an unprecedented $600 million on signings in one season. While it's arguable that none of these ownership options are as bad as PIF, none of them are particularly good either. But American billionaires hoping to squeeze all they can out of beloved clubs and open sports laundering vehicles are the two most powerful forces in football today. It's no surprise, then, that Leo Messi's dramatic choice of where to play after an icy exit from PSG was between Saudi Arabia and Miami. Long time coming. Today's financially and morally bleak football landscape is probably worse than many could have imagined just a decade ago, but it still reflects long-standing trends. The Premier League itself was founded by top English clubs looking to break away from the lower leagues to boost broadcast revenue in the early 1990s. The pursuit of TV money also reshaped the Champions League in the same period. And while it's been a long time since most top European clubs were community-owned, the amount of money that's been invested in the game over the last few decades, particularly through ever bigger broadcast deals, has redefined who is capable of get involved with football. West London's favorite oligarch, Roman Abramovich, buying Chelsea in 2003 was a further step towards the current situation. While American billionaires such as Arsenal owner Stan Kroenke or Manchester United's Glazer family invested in Premier League teams around the same time, they were hoping to leverage what they saw as undervalued assets to increase their wealth. Abramovich, on the other hand, was more interested in keeping his money outside Russia and building a network of influence in Britain. Like today's owners at Newcastle, Manchester City, or PSG, profitability, especially in the short term, was simply not a factor. The era of trying to compete with clubs where money is literally not a factor has begun, and it looks like it won't be ending anytime soon. PF's foray into English football isn't the only event that echoes the sad and stupid elements of football's past. For this, domestic spending has an unimpressive precedent. In the 2010s, China invested wildly in its domestic league, in addition to Chinese investors snapping up some European teams, spending money on big names in hopes of helping China become a global competitor in the world game. Now the stars gone and that dream seems to be imploding. But the usual rules of football accounting assure us that if Saudi Arabia, or even the United States, spends even more on star players, it will surely work better. Product placement. Famous soccer players are some of the most popular athletes on the planet. They undoubtedly deserve to be well rewarded for their hard work, and the money is much better in their pockets than those of corrupt owners, sponsors, or institutions like FIFA or UEFA. But once the sums of money involved in the game become so high, it's impossible to prioritize the fans that make the players stars. Every staggering step football has taken towards its current state has been a brutal loss for fans. Not just because skyrocketing costs have driven up ticket prices or insatiable addictions to broadcast revenue means that matches start at times that are inconvenient for fans. More importantly, every step that sees money take precedence over everything else and commoditize the sport erodes anything resembling democratic control, transparency, and fan influence. The evolution of football ownership and investment has seen clubs move from community entities to global assets, turning fans into nothing more than consumers. And even those who support teams from afar have been hurt by it all. Streaming bidding wars mean you need a handful of increasingly expensive streaming services just to watch your team play, if the club you support belongs to a foreign sovereign state or a friendly, local billionaire. There were some glimmers of hope. In Germany, a combination of the structural 50+1 ownership model which dictates that members, in this case fans, own a controlling majority of their clubs, outside of some high-level exemptions such as RB Leipzig, named after Red Bull, and a highly politicized fan scene demonstrate that things can be different. Due to widespread fan-led outcry, the Bundesliga recently decided not to sell a large chunk of its broadcast rights to private equity vultures, while years of protest from hardcore Bayern fans has pressured the club to end its sponsorship. But those wins largely maintain an already broken status quo, especially when leagues with more democratic structures and critical fans must compete with others that show few such qualms. Without a complete reimagining of football, regulation to stop dictators from snapping up clubs and stars, and widespread democratization of the sport on a global scale, we will be forced to endure the worst elements of football's escalation at the hands of the PIF and the Saudi state. Which will be the worst thing that ever happened to gambling, until another country with even more money, and less scruples, comes along and does the exact same thing. Hope you enjoyed the video. What did you think of the video? Subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion in the comments.